Act 3, The Last Signal. Chapter 7, Coalition Descends. The sky above Alecton-IV fractured at dawn. It began with a shimmer, the stealth fields of the Coalition fleet disengaging as they entered the lower atmosphere. 7 vessels, each the size of the colony's central plaza, descended through the copper-stained clouds in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with an unnatural perfection, untouched by the corrosive atmosphere that had eaten away at colonial structures for decades. They moved with deliberate precision, positioning themselves at equidistant points around the settlement's perimeter. Mara watched from the emergency command center, where the council had gathered to monitor the final hours before the deadline. The atmospheric override preparations were nearly complete. Environment shelters had been designated, survival lots drawn, and essential personnel assigned. Half the colony would live, half would die, and Alecton would begin its long healing process. Unless Kael succeeded. Any word from the reactor core? Vega asked, her voice tight with the strain of impending decisions. Mara shook her head. Nothing since the initial connection. Elias is monitoring his neural patterns, but she didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what was at stake. On the main display, Coalition drones deployed from the hovering ships, hundreds of them, forming a containment perimeter around the settlement. Unlike the scout drones from days before, these were clearly weaponized, their sleek bodies housing energy projectors capable of targeted sterilization. They're not waiting for the deadline, Counselor Reeves observed grimly. They're preparing to act as soon as it expires. Or sooner, Vega added. We need to make our decision now. The atmospheric override requires at least 4 hours to initialize. Mara's comm unit activated, startling everyone in the room. Elias's voice came through, breathless and urgent. Mara, you need to get down here. Something's happening with Kael. Is he all right? She demanded. I don't know what he is, but he says he's found something. Something about the Coalition. Mara looked to Vega, who nodded tersely. Go. We'll hold off on the override for 1 more hour. After that, we have no choice. The reactor core was transformed when Mara arrived. The neural interface equipment glowed with an intensity that cast eerie shadows across the walls, and the control console displays flickered with data streams too rapid to follow. Kael remained in the chair, his body relaxed now, but his eyes were different. They reflected the blue glow of the interface, but there was something else there, a depth that hadn't existed before. Kael. Mara approached cautiously. He turned to her, his movements fluid but somehow precise. When he spoke, his voice carried the same harmonic undertone she'd heard before, but now they seemed more integrated, less alien. Mara, I found them. I found what the Coalition is hiding. What do you mean? What did you find? Kael gestured, and one of the displays changed, showing what appeared to be classified Coalition protocols, data that should have been impossible to access from Alecton. EIDOLON doesn't just connect to colony systems, he explained. It can reach further, into any system that interfaces with Alecton's remaining terraforming network, including Coalition vessels. Elias stepped forward, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. He's been accessing their secure channel for the past hour. The neural interface is allowing him to bypass their encryption as if it doesn't exist. How is that possible? Mara asked. Because they're using our technology, Kael replied. The Coalition's bioadaptive systems are based on the same architecture as Alecton's terraforming AI. They've built their entire ecological preservation protocol on stolen colonial tech. The implications hit Mara like a physical blow. They're using the same systems that failed here, the same AI architecture that caused the disaster. Yes, and they've been hiding it for decades. Kael's eyes flickered, data streams momentarily visible in their depths. That's why they abandoned us after the disaster. That's why they're so determined to sterilize Alecton now. We're not just a failed experiment. We're evidence of their technological theft and its catastrophic failure. Can you prove this? Mara asked. In response, Kael gestured again, and the display filled with technical schematics, development logs, and communication records. A comprehensive history of the Coalition's appropriation of colonial terraforming technology. This changes everything, Elias breathed. If the wider galactic community learned that the Coalition's vaunted preservation protocols were built on stolen tech that caused a planetary disaster, they'd lose their authority to enforce the Preservation Accord, Mara finished. But how does this help us now? The Coalition ships are already here. The sterilization is hours away. Because I can do more than just access their systems, Kael said, his voice taking on a new resonance. I can control them. Mara stared at him. Control Coalition ships? That's impossible. Not for EIDOLON. Not for what I've become. Kael's expression shifted, showing a glimpse of his original self beneath the transformed exterior. Mara, the neural buffers are working. I'm still me, but I'm also more. I can see the colony's systems, the preserved minds in the forge, and now the Coalition's network. I can move between them. What are you suggesting? Elias asked. A different kind of deception, Kael replied. Instead of trying to convince the Coalition we've evolved into a new species, we expose their hypocrisy. We take control of their communication systems and broadcast the truth to every Coalition world simultaneously. They just cut the transmission, Mara argued. Not if we lock them out of their own systems first. Kael's eyes gleamed. For a few crucial minutes, we could make the entire Coalition listen. Mara exchanged glances with Elias. The plan was audacious, perhaps impossible, but they had run out of alternatives. How long would it take to prepare this broadcast? She asked. The interface is already gathering the necessary evidence, Kael replied. But to ensure maximum distribution, I need access to the colony's main communication array. The auxiliary reactor doesn't have enough power to reach beyond this system. The main array is under council control, Elias pointed out. They'd need to approve this plan. Mara checked her chronometer. We have 43 minutes before Vega initiates the atmospheric override. Let's make them count. As they prepared to leave, Kael caught Mara's arm. The touch sent a strange sensation through her. As if, for just a moment, she could feel the edges of what he had become, the expanded awareness that now lived behind his eyes. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. The EIDOLON connection. It's not temporary. The neural pathways it creates are permanent. You mean you'll stay like this? Even after we disconnect you? Yes. Part of me will always be connected to the forge now, to the preserved minds inside it. His expression was unreadable, including my mother's. Before Mara could respond, alarms blared throughout the colony. Emergency channels activated with automated warnings. Coalition vessels breaching containment perimeter. Sterilization protocols initiating. This is not a drill. The deadline hadn't expired. The Coalition was moving early. They know. Kael said, his voice suddenly urgent. They've detected the intrusion into their systems. They're accelerating the timeline. Outside, the copper sky turned white as Coalition ships powered their primary weapons. The sterilization of Alecton-IV had begun. Chapter 8. The Choice of Monsters. The command center was in chaos when Mara and Kael arrived. Emergency displays showed Coalition vessels moving into attack formation, their weapons systems fully charged. Drones had already begun targeted strikes against the colony's defensive infrastructure. Power relays, communication nodes, and sensor arrays falling in quick succession. They're isolating us, Vega shouted over the alarms, cutting off our ability to coordinate a response or to broadcast a distress signal. Counselor Reeves added grimly. Mara pushed through the crowd, Kael close behind. His presence drew startled looks. The neural interface had left visible traces, faint luminescent patterns beneath his skin that pulsed with his heartbeat. His eyes still carried that unsettling depth, as if he was seeing through multiple layers of reality simultaneously. The atmospheric override won't save us now, Mara announced. The Coalition isn't waiting for the deadline, but we have another option. Quickly, she explained what Kael had discovered. The Coalition's theft of colonial technology, their cover-up of the true causes behind Alecton's disaster, and the possibility of exposing their hypocrisy to the wider galactic community. You expect us to believe that he, Vega gestured at Kael's transformed appearance, can somehow hijack Coalition systems and broadcast a message powerful enough to stop a sterilization fleet. I don't just believe it, Kael replied, his harmonically layered voice silencing the room. I can demonstrate it. He approached the command center's main console. As his fingers touched the interface, the displays changed instantly, cycling through Coalition security protocols as if they were unlocked doors. Within seconds, he had accessed the fleet's internal communication network. The faces of Coalition officers appeared on screen, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm as they realized their systems had been breached. This is just their local network, Kael explained. To reach the wider Coalition, we need the colony's main communication array, specifically the quantum entanglement transmitter in the central spire. That transmitter hasn't functioned in decades, Reeves objected. It's been dormant, not dead, Kael countered. EIDOLON can reactivate it, but I need direct access to the hardware. A violent tremor shook the command center as a Coalition strike hit nearby. Dust rained from the ceiling, and secondary alarms indicated structural damage to the colony's outer sectors. They're working inward, Vega observed, methodically destroying the settlement ring by ring. We have perhaps 30 minutes before they reach the central sectors. Then we have 30 minutes to broadcast the truth, Mara said firmly. Vega studied her, then Kael, her expression hardening into decision. Do it. The atmospheric override is no longer viable anyway. They've already destroyed 2 of the catalyst stations. I'll need a security team, Kael said. The central spire will be a primary target once they realize what we're attempting. You'll have it, Vega assured him. Counselor Reeves, assemble our best people. The rest of you, she addressed the room at large, prepare emergency shelters. If this fails, we need to protect as many as we can for as long as possible. As the command center mobilized, Saren approached Mara, a group of colony-born at her back. We want to help, she said simply. Mara assessed them quickly. Young, adapted to Alecton's harsh conditions, and determined. The central spire will need defenders. People who can move quickly through toxic conditions if the environmental systems fail. Saren nodded. We can do that. The journey to the central spire became a gauntlet as Coalition strikes intensified. Twice they were forced to detour around collapsed sections, and once they had to run through an area where environmental containment had failed, acid rain pouring through a breach in the ceiling. The colony-born moved through it with minimal protection, their adapted skin resistant to the corrosive effects that would have quickly incapacitated the older colonists. The central spire itself remained intact, a testament to the original builder's foresight. It housed the colony's most critical systems, including the quantum entanglement transmitter that had once maintained instantaneous communication with Earth and other settled worlds. The transmitter occupied the spire's uppermost level, a circular chamber ringed with equipment that had lain dormant for 2 decades. As they entered, Kael moved directly to the central console, his movements now carrying an eerie precision. The security team established a perimeter, while Saren and the other colony-born positioned themselves at key junctures where environmental systems might fail first. How long will this take? Mara asked, as Kael began interfacing with the transmitter systems. To reactivate the quantum network? Minutes. To compile the evidence into a coherent broadcast that can't be easily dismissed? Longer. His fingers moved across the controls within human speed. The Coalition will detect the power surge as soon as the transmitter activates. They'll target this location immediately. Another impact rocked the building, closer this time. Through the spire's observation windows, Mara could see Coalition vessels methodically destroying the settlement's middle ring. Precision energy weapons carved through structures with surgical efficiency, leaving nothing but molten slag in their wake. They're not just destroying buildings, she realized aloud. They're erasing evidence, making sure nothing remains that could contradict their version of events. Exactly, Kael confirmed, not looking up from his work. The Coalition's ecological authority depends on the perception of their technological superiority and ethical infallibility. Alecton threatens both. The transmitter hummed to life, power flowing into systems long dormant. Displays activated around the chamber, showing connection status to the quantum network that spanned Coalition space. One by one, channels opened, each representing a potential audience of millions. It's working, Mara breathed. For now, Kael cautioned. I'm using EIDOLON to bypass their security protocols, but they'll adapt quickly. We'll have minutes at most once the broadcast begins. A proximity alarm sounded. Coalition drones had detected the power surge and were converging on the central spire. The security team readied their weapons, salvage colonial tech that seemed pitifully inadequate against Coalition armaments. We need more time, Kael said, his voice tense. The evidence compilation is only at 60%. Saren stepped forward. We'll buy you that time. She turned to her fellow colony-born. The maintenance tunnels. We can use them to reach the external defense grid. Those defenses were disabled years ago, Reeves objected. The automated systems were, Saren agreed. But the physical emplacements are still there. We can operate them manually. Mara understood immediately. You're talking about the pulse cannons on the spire's exterior. They were designed to clear orbital debris, not fight off Coalition drones. They emit an electromagnetic pulse, Saren pointed out. Coalition drones rely on sensitive electronics. It might be enough to disrupt them temporarily. It was a desperate plan, but they had passed the point where any plan wasn't desperate. Mara nodded. Go. But be careful. Those external platforms have no environmental protection. As Saren and half the colony-born disappeared into the maintenance access, Kael suddenly tensed. Something's wrong, he said, his voice taking on new harmonics. The Coalition is implementing a system-wide purge. They're trying to sever my connection to their network. Can they do that? Mara asked. Not completely. Not now that EIDOLON has established pathways. But they can complicate things. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw fear beneath the transformed surface. Mara, if they succeed in isolating their systems, the broadcast will fail. Everything we've done will be for nothing. What do you need? A stronger connection, more processing capacity than I can access alone. He hesitated. I need more minds in the network. I need EIDOLON to expand. Mara understood what he was asking. You want to connect others to the interface, to create the collective consciousness the Forge described. Yes, but with the neural buffers intact, preserving individual identity. His expression was solemn. It's a choice, Mara. A terrible choice between remaining fully human in our final hours or becoming something else with a chance of survival. Outside, the first Coalition drones reached the spire. The choice of monsters lay before them. Die as humans or survive as something new. Chapter 9. Ashes or Ascension. The first pulse cannon fired from the spire's exterior with a sound like thunder. The electromagnetic discharge rippled outward in a visible wave, catching 3 Coalition drones in its radius. They faltered mid-flight, their precision movements dissolving into erratic spirals before they plummeted toward the ground. Through the observation windows, Mara caught a glimpse of Saren on the external platform, her adapted skin glistening with acid rain as she manually realigned the cannon for another shot. It's working, Reeves said, a note of disbelief in his voice. They're actually holding them back. Temporarily, Kael cautioned. The Coalition will adapt their drone shielding, and the capital ships remain beyond the pulse radius. On the displays, the evidence compilation had reached 78%. Coalition systems were fighting back now, security protocols activating to isolate compromised networks. Kael's fingers moved with increasing urgency across the controls, his skin glowing brighter as EIDOLON channeled more processing power through his neural pathways. We're losing ground, he said grimly. Their system purge is accelerating. I can't maintain the connections alone. Mara looked around the chamber at the colonists present, the security team, the remaining colony-born, Counselor Reeves. Each face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. They had come this far together. Will they take the final step? How would it work? She asked Kael. Connecting others to EIDOLON? The transmitter chamber was designed with neural interface capabilities, he explained. The original colonists used it for enhanced communication during critical operations. Those systems could be repurposed to extend EIDOLON's network, and everyone would experience what you're experiencing now. This expanded awareness, yes, but each person would remain themselves, their individual consciousness preserved within the larger network. His eyes met hers. It's not what happened to the original 12, Mara. The neural buffers make the difference. Another impact shook the spire as a Coalition drone broke through the defensive perimeter and struck the upper levels. Emergency systems activated, sealing breached sections. "We're out of time," Reeves said. "The pulse cannons won't hold much longer." Mara made her decision. "Do it. Activate the neural interfaces." Kael nodded and entered a sequence into the central console. Panels slid open around the chamber's perimeter, revealing neural interface stations similar to the one in the auxiliary reactor core, but more sophisticated. Each station contained a headset designed to establish non-invasive connection to the user's neural pathways. "This is voluntary," Mara announced to the room. "No one is ordered to connect. But without more minds in the network, the broadcast will fail." She moved to the nearest station and lifted the interface headset. "I'll go first." The headset settled over her temples with a whisper of contact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then sensation exploded through her consciousness. It wasn't pain, exactly, but an overwhelming flood of information, as if every nerve in her body had suddenly become aware of connections that had always existed but never been perceived. She gasped, her vision blurring, then expanding. The chamber around her remained visible, but now she could also see more. The spire's systems pulsed like a circulatory system. The quantum transmitter blazed with potential connections stretching across space. And Kael glowed with complex patterns of light and data, his consciousness a familiar presence suddenly adjacent to her own. "Mara." His voice wasn't spoken aloud but felt directly in her mind. "You're here. This is incredible," she responded, discovering that thought translated effortlessly into communication within the network. Others were joining now. Reeves settled a headset onto his temples, his consciousness appearing in the network like a new star igniting. Then came the security team members, each adding their unique perspective to the expanding awareness. The colony-born who had remained inside connected last, their adapted neural patterns integrating with surprising ease. Through their shared perception, Mara could see Saren and the others on the external platforms, fighting to maintain the defensive perimeter. She could feel their determination, their fear, their hope. Emotions carried through the ambient connection that EIDOLON created between all colonial systems. "The broadcast," she reminded Kael. "How much longer?" "Compilation at 92%, he replied. "But the Coalition purge is still gaining ground. We need more processing capacity." The memory forge came a new thought from Reeves, his strategic mind quickly adapting to network thinking. If we could fully integrate it into EIDOLON, the preserved minds, Mara realized, they could join the network too. "Yes," Kael confirmed, "but accessing them would require." Me came another voice, unexpected and familiar. Elias had arrived in the chamber, breathless from his journey through the besieged colony. "I have the authorization codes for full forge integration." As Elias connected to the network, his consciousness brought decades of archival knowledge, the colony's history flowing into their shared awareness. He moved to the central console, working alongside Kael to establish the final connection to the memory forge. Outside, the situation deteriorated rapidly. 2 of the pulse cannons had failed, and Coalition drones were converging on the remaining platforms. Through the network, Mara felt Saren's grim determination as she continued firing, even as acid rain burned through her protective clothing. "Forge connection established," Kael announced suddenly. The network expanded exponentially as hundreds of preserved minds awakened from dormancy, their consciousness flowing into EIDOLON like tributaries joining a river. Each brought unique knowledge, perspective, and purpose. The original colonists, the terraforming specialists, the scientists who had designed Alecton systems. Among them, Mara sensed a presence that resonated strongly with Kael, his mother, her consciousness embracing her sons across the divide of death and digital preservation. The combined processing power of hundreds of minds accelerated the evidence compilation. "Broadcast ready," Kael announced, initiating transmission. The quantum entanglement transmitter surged with power, establishing simultaneous connections to thousands of receivers across Coalition space. Through the network, Mara could visualize the broadcast spreading like ripples in a pond, reaching Coalition administrative centers, civilian hubs, military installations, and media outlets. The message began with stark simplicity. The Coalition has lied to you. What followed was a comprehensive exposure of the Coalition's technological theft, their responsibility for Alecton's disaster, and their subsequent cover-up. Evidence flowed in a carefully structured narrative. Technical schematics proving the shared architecture between colonial terraforming systems and Coalition preservation technology, internal communications documenting the decision to abandon Alecton rather than acknowledge failure, and finally, live footage of the current sterilization operation. This is not preservation, the broadcast concluded. This is the erasure of witnesses. This is the silencing of victims. This is the Coalition's greatest crime, happening now. Through EIDOLON, they could sense the impact as the message reached its destinations. Confusion, shock, outrage rippling through Coalition populations. Military channels erupted with conflicting orders as civilian oversight committees demanded immediate verification and investigation. It's working, Mara realized. They're listening. A new presence entered their awareness. A Coalition command signal directed at the sterilization fleet. Suspend operations pending investigation. Maintain position, but cease aggressive action. For a moment, hope surged through the network. Then came another signal, this one encrypted at the highest level. Disregard civilian oversight. Complete sterilization as ordered. Leave no evidence. The Coalition ships above Alecton continued their advance, weapons systems still active. The broadcast had created dissent within the Coalition, but not enough to immediately halt the sterilization. We've failed, Reeves thought, despair coloring his consciousness. No, Kael countered. We've only begun. EIDOLON gives us one more option. Through their shared perception, Mara understood what he was suggesting, a capability of EIDOLON they hadn't yet utilized. Not just communication or information sharing, but direct control of integrated systems, including, potentially, the Coalition's own technology. We can take control of their ships, Kael explained. Not just their communications, but their actual systems. That would make us no better than them. Reeves objected. Using technology to override autonomy. It would make us survivors, countered one of the preserved minds. Administrator Chun, her consciousness still carrying the authority of her former position. Sometimes survival requires becoming the very thing you fear. The choice hung in the network, a final decision between ashes or ascension, between accepting destruction or embracing a power that might forever change what it meant to be human on Alecton-IV.